All right. Hello, everyone. This is Randy Shannon, and we are back with 42action.org, and we're excited for our call tonight. That's Thursday, March 19th, right at 8 o'clock on the hour. And for those of you that are new, we want to welcome you. I know we've got some new listeners to the call. Some of the stuff tonight may be a little bit over your head, but that's okay. Take notes. Get your pen out, you guys. The replay call is, playback number 805-399-1299, and the PIN code is the exact same as what you put in, 779159#. So we have two special guests here tonight. First off, we're going to start with Steve Curry. He was with us last week. He was outstanding. That's our, second, third time at least that we've had Steve back. And he talks about things that a lot of people are unaware of and don't understand how great of a remedy this can be for you and for your cases. So our website, for those of you that are new, that haven't been to the site yet, is 42action.org. And, what we know and what we strive to have more of here is knowledge, because that is your primary defense. And without it, in today's world, in this country, as Gloria likes to say, you are doomed. So on this call, we help strengthen and empower each other. It is our right, our First Amendment right. And for those of you that, from those three-letter agencies that like to try and listen in, grab your pen and paper too. You might actually learn something, because on this call, we're not going to bend the kiss the knee of the people that think that they're our masters. We're theirs. So I want to welcome Steve to the call. Steve, welcome, and you've got the floor, my friend.
Thank you so very, very much, Randy. You're always such a gracious host, and I do appreciate all of your listeners. They are very intelligent people. As all of us are, we're grasping, we're searching, we're trying to find the remedy. We know there's a lot of talk out there, a lot of lips moving, a lot of lip service, and yet the answers seem to be out of the reach of a lot of folks. And that's hopefully what we bring to the table, our remedies. I'm going to jump right into it. The bills of exchange, otherwise known as BOEs, they are used as a vessel with which to transport toxic wastes. And we're in hopes that these vessels are heading eastward, back towards London, where we will deposit these toxic wastes right back in their laps. And so far, so good. This program has taken on an energy of its own. It's taken flight, thanks to the good folks like Randy and quite a few other folks out there. From the outset, folks, let me introduce what we term to be the Four Corners Doctrine, which is the centerpiece or support for the Bills of Exchange program. If you can, and if you have paper in hand, I would like you to draw a square on your paper, and just a square, equilateral. And up in the upper left-hand corner, I'd like you to put the term jurisdiction. Up in the upper right-hand corner, I'd like you to put the word presumption. In the lower left, I'd like you to put the word consent. In the lower right corner, I'd like you to put the word injury. In the very center of this box, folks, I'd like you to put a dot or a circle, and we're going to call this contracts. Now that you have your box in place, I want you to draw a horizontal line right through contracts. This is a very, very key part of our program. Draw that line right through contracts. Now, what we're dealing with, folks, on the bottom is everything that's private, individual, and natural. We're dealing there with land and soil and everything that's solid about us as individual, natural, living, breathing, flesh and blood beings. It is only us that can be injured. It is only us that can give our consent, otherwise assign our free will. Free will is an important attribute to the exercise in the BOE program. It is up to us to find our own remedy. It is up to us to state how we've been injured. Let's take these terms one at a time and identify them as the world has identified them. You'll find these definitions on both sides, top and bottom to this box. Injury is defined as any invasion of a lawful or legal right. Now, having said that, I'm going to subtract one word from that statement, and you must understand why. The term legal no longer applies in our language. We no longer use the term legal, we use lawful. The law is the law, and legal is the conundrum. This is where the bar and the courts and all of that play games with us. They do it through legalese. This is why a lot of common law, private attorney generals like myself and others, this is why we've taken our law books, whatever they might be, volumes and volumes and volumes of them, and we've taken them out in our backyard and we've burned them. We no longer have to play this legalese game with anyone, law enforcement or the courts or our government. We use the term law. We'll use the term common law. We'll use the term natural law, individual law, God's law, however you want to put it. We use those terms not so much for our rights, but for defending ourselves in the face of an invasion. Again, injury, invasion of a lawful right. If you go to Black's Law, you'll find that to be defined as invasion of a legal right. Please note that the Black's Law Dictionary over time has been edited and altered and redacted to fit the lawyer's game. We no longer play their game. And quite frankly, their day is numbered. I have some excellent news to report at the end of this little introduction here. So back to definitions. We did injury. Only an individual, flesh and blood, living being can be injured. A collective, a corporate body cannot. Why? Because a corporation, a corporate body or collective, is determined to be artificial, fictitious, and it is an artifice. It is a contrivance. Corporations are defined only by their contemplations of law. It's very important to understand contemplations are not law because contemplations are not manifest. Contemplations are still in their mind. It's in their law books as part of their fiction. The law is ours. The law goes back to our, here's another term for you, our patents. Private patents, I've been doing a lot of work. Hopefully folks are getting it. When you claim your private patent and estate under your real name, your God-given name, you are stating that your patent is everything that you have created within and without you. You are stating that everything that you have control of in your free will is yours. Guess what patents cannot tolerate? They cannot tolerate infringements. Go to the patent office and ask them about patent infringements. It's in the same language. Patents are ours. Only a human flesh and blood being can create. Only a living, breathing being can write a signature. Only a living, breathing being can construct any type of creation. We can create in our own minds And we have the power to manifest those thoughts into what we want to know as our reality. If you folks are into biblical, God said, let this be true. And so it was. The book of Genesis covers the idea of thought being manifest into 3D reality, if you would. So injury, again, is part of our patenting. It is also part of consent. We do not let anyone have our free will without our consent. No way, no how. If we do not conform, if we choose not to accept or agree to terms and conditions in a contract that are unsuitable for us, that are not to our benefit, they're not of our making, we have the free will and the choice to say no. The word no. Please put that in your everyday vocabulary when it comes to your government, from law enforcement. Just say no. Use your finger. No, you can't do it. Law enforcement and the courts have been instructed that they cannot operate, they cannot proceed, they cannot commence proceedings against you without your full knowledge, number one, and without your consent. These are Supreme Court rulings all the way from the top. These are rulings from their own corporate charter. And if you need any validation of that, go to their own Title 28, Section 636, where they are instructed to have procedures in place to assure a continuity and your continued voluntary consent of all parties. So consent, we're dealing with that lower left-hand corner again. Think of it as free will. Anything that you are forced to do against your free will, you say no. Anything that you're induced to by fraud or intimidation, fear, and all of that, you have to get over your fear. We are human beings standing up for our own free will, and we have the obligation, we have the duty, we have the right to say no. Moving on with the definitions, let's go up to jurisdiction, which is a real heavy one for most folks. Jurisdiction, what does it mean? Juris. Juris is a form of judgment, and it's been with us for ages, folks, long, long time. Juris. The diction is how those people have been able to operate over us. They use written language and they use diction, the voice. Diction, everyone's familiar with dictating machines. Well, that's what court reporters are. They're dictation machines, aren't they? They record arguments. But let's take a look at who has jurisdiction over the individual, and we find that there is none. No jurisdiction, no power or authority over the individual or his rights to property. Keep in mind that we had some wonderful engineers to our Constitution. They knew that as a collective, as a republic, that we needed some pretty strong language. And let me jump into this just momentarily. Everyone has assumed or presumed that the Constitution is full of our rights. Let me correct you. It is not. These are not our rights. But what they are constraints and prohibitions against those who would invade upon us. Remember, we carry the law. They do not. They think they carry the law only because they can convince you to give up your consent. They're the only ones that can injure you if you let them. So again, we have injury by individual only. The corporation cannot be injured. But yet, we're enslaved, aren't we, and imprisoned in these mind games, these psyops, this indoctrination that we've, for centuries, it's been going on. We know the people that have done this to us. We know who they are. These are not nice people. They will play all sorts of games to get your consent. They will put you in prison until they get your consent, or basically after they get your consent. There are certain types of consent. Let me flow back to that real quickly, and I hope I'm not confusing anyone.
No, you're doing good.
Okay. Consent, there are several different types of consent. We have implied consent, which means a presumption of our consent, which we often give up to attorneys. They use implied consent to get our consent so they can make money on you in their court of law. There is expressed consent. Your Honor, I did it. There is written consent. This is what the courts need to prosecute you, is your written consent, no matter how they get it. And these people are so licentious, so greedy, so into themselves and their own profit centers and all of this, that they will bend every law that they can think of bending to get your signature. Never, ever, ever allow them to get your signature. If they do, then underneath your signature, if you're so afraid of these people, and you give them your signature, underneath you need to write without prejudice, against my will, under duress, under intimidation, I am fearful, whatever you'd like to write. All of that goes back to their laws, which are all uniform commercial codes. They understand those terms. And when you give your signature and then you write without my consent or under duress or whatever, without prejudice, you're notifying them that it was a distressful, stressful situation under which you were forced to give your consent. It's never applicable in a court of law. That's what we think. What they think is that any signature will do. No. And the reason that induced signatures onto a contract to make that contract null and void. Jurisdiction, we have a little bit more to cover there. Sorry to keep going back and forth. Jurisdiction, again, is part of the corporate mentality, and we're dealing in fiction and artificial beings. Artificial contracts. I'll leave that right where it is for a second. Let's go over to presumptions. Presumptions is what the jurisdiction people use to entice you into action. It's used to entice your consent and your signature. They'll say, well, it's the law that you sign. And then you would ask them, well, what is the law? And they cannot really define it other than to say it's statute law. Oh, it's an ordinance that you broke. It is a code violation. It is this and that. All of those are colors of law. And back to contemplation, these are not laws, folks. Not a one of them. Statutes, codes, ordinances are all colors of law, and the Supreme Court themselves have said so. Do our law enforcement people pay attention to those? No, because they're instructed that the law is these statutes, codes, and regulations. Let me put it to you very plainly. Statutory laws are nothing but revenue laws. They're there for their own profit, not ours. What we have when they try to induce us with statutory law, it's called a gratuitous bailer. Gratuitous bailer is someone offering loans in particular. Bailers are often called lenders. And they're wanting to give you a contract, your mortgage contract, for instance, but it's not for your benefit. It's wholly for theirs. And we know this because they will specify in their contracts what the principal amount is, and then the interest that is applied to that principal for you borrowing the money or them lending you the money. All that is artificial because you're getting no benefit out of it, really. You're being sucked into a contract that's asking you to produce money out of thin air. Take Federal Reserve notes, for instance. A lender will say, well, we're going to loan you X number of dollars for your mortgage. Under the Federal Reserve System, we know that that's all fiat, as in fiction. It's otherwise described as debt money. It enslaves. They're not loaning you any money. This has come up quite frequently lately in all of these mortgage issue cases before the court. And we actually have some pretty decent judges out there who say, no, there's really no money that you loan these people because you cannot apply a debt instrument on top of another debt instrument and call it a secured interest. So that's just one example of a presumption. Back to statutes, codes, and ordinances, all of those, again, are revenue producers for them only. And if it's a one unilateral party benefiting, that voids the contract. That's why statutes, codes, and ordinances have been ruled to be unconstitutional. And that the only law here in this country is considered the law of the land, or the supreme laws of the land. That's how our Constitution was built, to excise, to constrain, to prohibit anyone from offering you a bogus contract. Contracts go all the way down to traffic tickets again, speeding violations and all that. Those citations that you're signing are all contracts, and they're all presumptions of contract. You don't have to sign them. Your free will dictates. So if you don't want to sign it, don't sign it. And you're much better off when you don't. And you can tell the officer that's issuing that ticket, I'm not going to sign this. And he has no power or authority over you. None whatsoever. Unless he violates it, which law enforcement people have been trained to do. Because they have a gun on their hip, they think they have some power. They think they have the power and authority vested in them by a court of law. When we look at our courts, folks, we find that they are all bogus, that they are nothing but shills, impersonators, criminal felons. We'll jump into that in a minute when we hit the BOEs. Let's take a look at contracts right in the center. If you were to draw a line between, jurisdiction and contracts, and then draw a line from contracts back up to presumptions, you get what is known as an inverted triangle. This identifies the keel and the borders of the ship. It is very unstable on land. It floats like a top on the sea. It is not stable on land. Any contract between an attorney and a judge, let's say the judge is over there on the left, he has jurisdiction that he presumed that he had because someone told him that he was a special master. And the attorney class, again, attorneys are all officers of the court. They do not represent you, they represent the court. That has been known to be a fact of law. If you'd like to look that up, you're looking at People versus Sajak back in 1980. And you'll find where they stated a judge is an officer of the court, as well as are all attorneys. I'm just going to read this through because it's very important for you to understand who is an officer of the court. A state judge is a state judicial officer paid by the state to act impartially and lawfully. A federal judge is a federal judicial officer paid by the federal government to act impartially and lawfully. State and federal attorneys fall into the same general category and must meet the same requirements. A judge is not the court. I don't know how many folks out there have tuned into the case of U.S. versus Rod Class. Rod Class busted the whole regime. He had 4 federal district court judges admit on the record that they are a private foreign corporation. What do we say about foreigners in this country? If they're acting and impersonating, that makes them traitors, and it makes them all complicit in treason and sedition and a host of other things. It's a very scary thing that these people have done. They've come to our shores bearing gifts of justice, but the justice that they're handing out is absolutely beyond description. These people have given themselves, by self-appointment and self-rule and self-regulation, the power to enslave, imprison, accost, assault, murder. They've given themselves license to do all of this stuff to us, providing they have our consent to do it. That's the one requirement. I personally, and there's many, many people that are following this, we're now standing up and saying, nope, sorry, no more of that. No, you can't do it. And here's why. Because if you do, you're violating the constitutional constraints and prohibitions that have been put out before you. You've crossed that line in the sand. You've violated my First Amendment rights, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. You've even violated the 13th, the original 13th, which stated that the United States government prohibited practitioners of law from holding office. And should they do so, or when they have done so by membership into the bar, they lose their U.S. citizenship, and they're basically to give everything back that they've profited, and they're to leave our shores, or they can face imprisonment. That's the original 13th. What a marvelous document. And it's been not shredded. It's just been concealed from us by these attorneys and judges who presume to have contractual controls over our free will. No more. Back to the Four Corners Doctrine real quick. That one line that you drew horizontally through contracts, let's take a look at that. What we have are our republics, our collectives, our private corporations, our constitutions. We have our patents and estates and copyrights. Most of all, and most important of all, folks, is the oath of office. This is where an individual crosses the line into public service. As an individual, they sign an oath of office, and they are contracting not with us anymore. They're contracting to do a public service in the corporate arena, in our democracy, in public, meaning that they are putting forth a document that attests to their recognition and support of the Constitution of the state where you live and the U.S. Constitution. The oath of office, if you check the lineage, check the history of oaths of office, you're going to find that these were all promissory oaths made to a sacred object, maybe the Bible, maybe an effigy of one kind or another, but it's made on a solemn word, the solemn word of honor and integrity and character of that individual, that he's going to abide by the Constitution. He's going to abide by the fact that the Constitution was there to protect individual rights. When these jokers, and I say jokers, and actors who sign oaths of office knowing that they cannot possibly serve in any public capacity, a public office, they do so fraudulently. Every judge does it. Every attorney does it. And they give themselves license and special appointments and all of that to violate our voter and elections laws. They insert and infiltrate into all levels of our government, and they have corrupted the system. They have absolutely given us probable cause, saying it very lightly, to deal with them. They signed in their own blood to be loyal, to have allegiance to individual rights. They say that they will support and defend the Constitution. We find that that's not true in almost every case because of what they're tempted with through other presumptions and other jurisdictions. These are not honest people. A lot of them are just ill-informed. Imagine a law school student just out of college, and she's being induced into the bar. The bar, folks, British Accreditation Registry. That's what it means. That's what it stands for. Huge case just broke out of London but a couple of weeks ago, where the Queen of England was challenged on her oath, which precipitated the investigation into the bar, British Accreditation Registry, that's been protecting her and serving her, and she's allied to. Oaths of office. This is where we have them, folks. When these individuals have crossed the line, used their blood signatures, their wet blue ink signatures, to attest to an act of treason. We know this because in the black and white print, below their name where they sign it, they're saying that they are a judge. We haven't had judges in this country since 1946 because of what the bar did. They presented what's known as the Administrative Procedures Act. And they were under orders to become administrators and trustees for the bankrupted United States government of 1933. So basically, we've been in receivership with these jokers since 1933. They didn't quite have a good handle on it until 46, when they introduced legislation not only in the federal government but all throughout the states. This is where we got most of our three-letter agencies. We did have the IRS already, but it was adopted. It was contracted. The Internal Revenue Service is a private corporation that was given a contract to oversee the collection of debt in the United States. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, another three-letter, was charged with enforcing that along with the IRS. We have NSA. We have DHS. All of those got their start. We went from 11 agencies in 1945 to over 54, I believe it's 54 agencies after 1946. By the time the 50s rolled around, we had bar members creating their own private corporations in each state. We have proof of this, 1953, state of Colorado, wherein the bar members got together and put their articles of incorporation before our Colorado Secretary of State. You folks can all research your state bars, and you'll find the very same thing, that they are all private corporations. And what's more, they are franchise subsidiaries of the American Bar Association, formed in 1897 by one James Broadhead. James Broadhead Corporation still exists today as a nonprofit funneling mechanism for all of their revenue. I busted the bar last year, and I made it known throughout the country that they had funneled off from each and every justice center, just in the tax year of 2013, $237 million in tax-free funds using James O. Broadhead. This money goes offshore, goes back to the Bank of London, into the Crown Templar. Imagine that. And that's a very small amount compared to what Rod Klass and his folks have found. These folks are generating upwards of $100 million a month in revenue, or more. I even recall Miss Rhodes saying, well, that's $400 million within a month or so, some outrageous amount. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. So I'm getting off point there. Let's go back to oaths of office as being promissory notes. We have constructed a system, a remedy for every injured individual. And we hope to see BOEs bubbling up all over the country, and they are. They're being used quite effectively. What we're doing, let's look at promissory notes. These oaths of office are commercial instruments once they are signed by two or more people. Under the law, oaths of office must be securitized or monetized to have some value, some redemptive value in case somebody gets hurt. These amounts that we have on our bills, they are $100 million per offense, per person, per occurrence, per signature. So if you have 4 signatures on an oath of office, that oath of office is worth $400 million. That number we get from the insurance companies who have established that value, that dollar amount. We also get it from USC codes, United States codes. If you're interested, look up 15 USC 1 and 2. And this deals with all contracts, and if it's found that the contracts are somehow induced with fraud, that you're now looking at $100 million if you're convicted. And let me bring this up. I'd like to read this to you because it's important to understand. Give me half a second here. All right. 15 USC Code 1 trusts, etc., in restraint of trade illegal. And within this code, we have the penalty. It says, and I quote, every contract, combination in the form of trust or otherwise. What are oaths of office? They're trusts. What are oaths of office? They're contracts. So every contract, combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal. Not only is it illegal, it's unlawful. Every person who shall make any contract or engage in any combination or conspiracy hereby declared to be illegal shall be deemed guilty of a felony, and on conviction thereof shall be punished by fine not exceeding $100 million if a corporation or if any other person $1 million, or by imprisonment not exceeding 10 years, or both said punishments, in the discretion of the court. Who wrote this thing? Who wrote this law? It's the bar members. Everything goes back to the courts unless you demand otherwise. And with the BOEs, we have a practical, non-judicial form of remedy. You do not need to go to court, folks, for a settlement or remedy claim. No, you do not have to do it. Just think about your local traffic accident. What are you told to do? Exchange insurance cards. Exchange information. Let the insurance companies battle it out. Is that judicial? No. There are laws on the books that say for every injury there shall be a lawful remedy. It doesn't say that you have to go to court to win. Imagine this. We have oaths of office against, or we have defiled oaths of office that have been signed by judges who are criminally impersonating judges anyway. These are court administrators. On your oaths of office in black and white it says judge or district court judge or something. And he's just signed an oath of office for a sheriff. Can you see what's wrong with that picture? Number one, he's not a judge. Number two, he has no authority, jurisdiction, or power to take or give oaths. He's a private corporation. He's not our government. He's not a government official. Here in Colorado, we have Article 2, Section 6, I believe, that defines government officers and public officers. Guess what they don't include? Members of the judiciary are not considered government officers. They are not. They are not your government. And so who the heck are they? All they are is pirates. They use admiralty law, the law of the sea, to deceive you into thinking that they have some kind of power. They've deceived all of our sheriffs and our law enforcement people to think that they are in control. This is where these sheriffs have got to get a grip, and they got to quit taking money from the courts. And they have to stop issuing or executing these unconstitutional warrants, writs, all of that, summonses, everything. They've got to quit it. They've got to stop it because our sheriffs, their intent was to serve, right? So they get up to the judge, and all of a sudden he finds out that the contract that he signed on his oath of office is null and void because of who took his oath. He just vacated his office on his very first day of his position, and he didn't even know it. This is crucial for us, folks, here in the United States when we're looking at this master evil plan of Agenda 21. These UN troops that want to take over our country for all of its resources. All they have to do is walk up to a sheriff and say, "Sheriff, can we see your oath?" "Oh, sure." He produces his oath, and all the UN people have to do is say, "Hey, you didn't sign this oath for your office. You signed a contract with the judge, and the judge is not a judge. He's an administrator for us. So either you fall in line with us, or you fall in line with all the other individuals we're going to take to jail. You have no office, Sheriff. You've never had an office because of that oath. You vacated that office on your very first day." This is what I've been trying to instruct sheriffs throughout the country, including Sheriff Mack and several others here in Colorado and New Mexico and everywhere else. This is a very dangerous time for them. Unless they took a valid oath through their county clerk or through a notary or through the coroner, anyone else that's authorized under the government to give oaths, their oaths are defunct, null and void. So what we found too, just on a sidebar, is most of your deputy sheriffs who serve under the sheriff do not have oaths of office. We found it in Tennessee and Ohio and Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado, yet these sheriff's deputies have been assigned the task of serving writs and papers and processes and all of this, arrest warrants without proper oath or affirmation. Look at our Fourth Amendment, folks. No warrant or writ shall be served without proper and lawful oath or affirmation. That's a constraint. If they don't have an oath, they can't be serving us anything. We've found sheriff's deputies who've been in the rank and file for 4, maybe even 8, maybe even 12 years, never knowing anything about an oath of office. And the reason that they don't feel as though they have to have an oath of office is because a county attorney, bar member, sits there and says, oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Without an oath of office, the court can tell that deputy what to do. They can't very well tell the sheriff to go serve it because the sheriffs are under constitutional constraint not to do anything that would violate their oaths of office. We know they do it all the time, but here's where the difference is. It comes in our consent and to state that we will not be injured because of your job, of your task as a public official. No more. Because now we have the goods on you. We have the contract that you signed with that judge. And you have no power or authority because that contract that you made was with the judge, not for us. So, again, good. There's some good sheriffs out there, trust me, and we're bringing them back in line as fast and as hard as we can. We're trying to make them understand that the Constitution is something that they must defend and support, and they can no longer defend and support a foreign private for-profit corporation, otherwise known as the bar or the courts. Remember, a judge is not the court. A judge is not the court. If we had true courts, we would have Article 3 constitutional courts throughout the land. They don't exist, folks. They don't exist unless we force it to be that way, unless we remind them of the constitutional constraints and prohibitions. All right, I got a little off track there. Let's go back to the promissory notes. These are no different than the notes attached to your mortgage papers, your deed of trust. What do banks do when presented with a default? In other words, the homeowner is no longer making payments. The bank itself issues, usually to a court just to get a judgment against the landowner, saying, well, he defaulted on his promissory note. And the order is quickly rubber stamped, and it goes to the sheriff. The sheriff, thinking that he's doing the right thing, goes out and he serves eviction notices on the landowner for dishonoring his promissory oath and note. What are we doing with BOEs and oaths of office? These are promissory notes. We're foreclosing on them, and it is the duty of the sheriff to comply with our orders. They're supposed to go arrest violators. And where they should start is with each and every attorney, each and every judge who has coerced and intimidated and threatened and exploited and blackmailed them into submission, into executing their statutory revenue laws. If we can get this built in, if we can get this mindset changed, we have a really good chance of doing that. Now, how do we employ the BOE? Number one, we would construct on one side of a secured document. By the way, BOEs are considered by the U.S. Treasury and others, international law, to be legal tender, no different than the dollar. These are legal tenders, and you can take them to a bank, a Federal Reserve Bank, for payment. What if they refuse? No one's refused us yet. It's just that they don't know what to do with them. And we tell them how the process works. We take the BOE, and it's a two-party arrangement. Some of you have seen the BOEs already. But on the face of them, we have up at the top bill of exchange, and then it says bearer's registry number. And those are very unique individual numbers that go back to you, and they go back to the offender that you're charging. And, of course, it's $100 million, and you go down to the next level, the next section, and it identifies the promissory note. And this is where it's important. On the back of the BOE, we're going to copy we're going to put a copy of the oath of office. This oath of office is signed by 2 or more people. We're going to say on the face of the BOE which one of those people we're going to charge $100 million to. We're going to identify them as seditioners and traitors on the face because of their violations of their oath of office. We'll either use the date that they took their oath as a promissory note registry number, or we'll use what most county clerks employ, or even state Secretary of State's employ. It's called a reception number. Anything to identify that oath of office leading back to its original wet blue ink signature, which is on file either with the county or the state, or in the case of municipal, it's going to be with the city clerk. That's our promissory note. That's the one that's been defiled by their violations of their constitutional oaths. We'll name that person, and it's in a corporate name. Right underneath that, we say any and all aliases, meaning his birth name, meaning his Christian name, meaning his individual name. We'll cite the reasons why, right underneath that, why he or she violated the oath. And the most important part of this is down below where the individual, you, being a secured injured party, you're going to put your name in there, in your Christian name, lowercase, and then you're going to tell the world that under patent and under your copyright, you are charging back your injuries for redemption, for remedy. And in this, we define the parties to the contract. We are the drawer of this contract, this very unique contract, to 2 parties only. That means you as the injured party and anyone that you want to assign it to. In the cases we're doing now, those are going to be the banks, the Federal Reserve banks, who are obligated under law to make payment due on demand of $100 million for your injuries. What's restricted in these contracts are any intrusions or invasions of any unsecured third party, meaning the courts and all attorneys. The contract is to be negotiated very simply under the supreme laws of the land, no colors of law withstanding. So what we've done is taken our contract and taken it all the way back to our organic constitutional constraints and prohibitions. We've identified the parties. In our contract, we've identified the injuries, presumptions, jurisdiction, and we do not give consent to any unsecured third party. We're asking the bankers to take these as bad checks, something that they do every day. But the amounts are fairly large, so they're really not wanting to give that up. But what we do, too, we accompany these bills of exchange, which, and this is very important, you must state your injuries in an affidavit of truth and injury, which is an accompanying document. You present that to the banker. He becomes your assign. And we've made it kind of voluntary, for these bankers to jump aboard. And some bankers have come back and said, well, we'd really like to get involved, but we're just too small. There's really no too small a bank. And we're not going to be the first, they say. I've been on the phone to several bankers, and this is their attitude. We'd love to do it. Number one, there's nothing wrong with them. Number two, the banks are going to make 50% of that $100 million for rendering their banking expertise and services in commerce. That's all we're asking, and we're giving them an opportunity to make $50 million per head. It's getting a lot of attention. And basically what we're asking the bankers to do, we're offering them an opportunity to obey the law, to process these things for what they are, again, legal tender.
Yeah, come back.
Process them as they would a bad check. It's no different. Nothing out of their normal procedures. Again, we're asking them to obey the law and to help us out. And for those services and their expertise, we're going to give them $50 million. What a deal. This is more money than they've ever seen in their lives. We have a program, we haven't implemented it yet, but imagine this. If we were to take the $50 million from the banker, we would put that in a public trust in our county, and we would go to the sheriff and say, look, Sheriff, how would you like not to have to go to the commissioners every quarter or every year with this long list of budgetary items? What if everything that you needed to do your job was afforded to you through this public trust? We're taking the bad money. Think about Robin Hood for a minute. Taking back from the rich and giving back to the poor. That's really what we're doing. And we're asking for all the monies that have been stolen from us in the quadrillions of dollars that have been stolen from us through the court systems and that have gone offshore into these beautiful nest egg hedge funds and all that stuff. We want that money back. And what we're going to do with that money, we're going to budget you, Sheriff, for everything that you need to get the job done. No more taxing, no more worries about tax appropriations and all of that. We could even set up a fund where people could pay their mortgages off and no more of that. We're using rightful, lawful means at which to extricate from the bad guys everything that they've stolen from us through public corruption. And we're redistributing it. A lot of people don't like the term, redistribute the wealth. Well, it's only coming from the bad guys. Come on. And it's money that they stole from us in the first place. So imagine, having done that, imagine this, folks, if everyone were to be able to get a hold of oaths of office for all of your public trustees, public officials, and say 3 people stepped up before the elections and they put a bond of $100 million each on all the candidates, and they told them, if you violate your oath of office, if you step outside of these prohibitions and constraints like the Constitution, we're going to take all of what you've owned and what your family has owned, and anything that you've done with corruption or fraud. We're going to charge you these bonds. I'm going to hold one against you. Jack over there is going to hold one, and Mary, she's going to hold one. That's $300 million. How much are you going to make at your job? You're going to be down and out on the street before you can turn around, because we will not tolerate you violating your word of honor. We're going to foreclose on you, Sheriff or Commissioner. How could we rectify our problems in voter and elections these days using the BOE? We can use it ahead of time, or we can challenge these corrupt officials after they've done their craft, after they've stolen money. It's going to be a little harder to get it back if we don't allow them to take it in the first place. I think we're going to be better off. So imagine BOEs / oaths of office being returned back into commerce with an order under an international law that demands performance, that demands that remedies be offered for those injured people. How many deadbeat, corrupt people do you think would want to get into public service? We would change our country around in short order. We would chase off the mobsters. We would extricate ourselves from the courts. We would not have these problems if they knew, number one, if there's a $100 million bounty on their head. I don't think they'd be making the same decisions and judgments that they are doing now. So I've rattled on enough here, and I really appreciate your attentiveness, and I hope I've covered enough to at least entice your curiosity into learning more.
Hello?
Just hold on. I'm going to wrap it up. Tomorrow night here in Colorado, we have what we call the BOE night, and we discuss bills of exchange. We start at 7 o'clock, and we can get that information out to you. We are going to be doing 2 videos. One is going to be on the Four Corners Doctrine. So if you were unable to grasp it through my explanation, you can see it being constructed on a little poster board or whatever. That's going to be very instructive. And also, we're going to go over the BOEs, how they are created, and how to process them. It's very, very simple, folks. It's probably the most simplest remedy that I've seen in a long time. It's so effective. It is 110% lawful. It meets all the criteria. I wouldn't be doing this. We've sent our material out to the FBI and the IRS and all over the place. Hey, if there's anything wrong with this, let us know. Hey, silence is acquiescence. Silence is agreement and acceptance. As we're finding, even attorneys can't argue the bills of exchange. They won't, because they have no room. Let me leave you with one thought. The reason that these are all non-judicial is for one very good reason. The judiciary is constricted, constrained, and prohibited from acts of deception, fraud, manipulation, misrepresentation, and they're restricted from engaging in any conflict of interest. Imagine a judge adjudicating over a BOE that has another judge's name on it. They cannot review, they cannot opine, they cannot adjudicate nothing over another bar member. And every judge in this country is a bar member by their own law. Supreme Court rules, in order to be a judge or a magistrate in this country, you must be a bar member. There will be those judges and attorneys saying, oh, no, that's not right. You have them call me, and I will send them it in writing. So that's why it's non-judicial. It's entirely commercial. If there's something about the courts, they all understand money and commerce. That's why they operate on UCC. And this is how they punish us and enslave us, is through UCC. We're using their very same laws to attack them, to put these bounties out on them. We're in hopes that the bankers will jump ship and turn over these vermin for all of their wrongdoing. So we know that there's honest bankers out there. We know that there's honest lawyers. We know that there's honest, good people with a goodwill in their hearts for you and I. There will be those people stepping up, taking these BOEs, putting them back into their own commerce, rewarding us for reporting on public and corruption. This is a way to eradicate public corruption from our soil. It truly, truly is.
You mentioned you had some good news. Is it something on your BOEs?
Well, sort of, yeah. I can share this with you.
Okay.
And I think I brought it up before. Since January 5th, I've been watching a major shift in one particular company, and that's Travelers Insurance. Travelers has a market share in providing bonds for public officials. That's one of their major market shares, is in providing bonds. What we were able to expose through a dirty little corporation here in Colorado, it's County Technical Services. They're a franchise Ponzi operation from other major insurance companies. We filed over $600 million in BOEs against one of the underwriters for County Technical Services. They don't like me very much, so they've ushered the courts to try to silence me, putting protection orders on me and everything else. That hasn't worked, and it won't. That reaction from the underwriters, from CTSI, without their ever arguing a single point, a single one of my allegations. All they know how to do is overreact like a bully in a schoolyard. I'm going to get you, and we're coming after you. Well, try as they might, they will not succeed. That reaction tells me that we're doing something right. Back to Travelers real quick. Since January 5th, I've seen a sell-off of shares by most of their top leading executive officers. And again, we're not talking about ones and twosies in shares. We're talking hundreds of thousands of shares traded back to the company, sold back at either $57 a share or $107 or $170 a share. Travelers sees the writing on the subway walls, and they've looked at they've been introduced to the BOEs and what we've been doing. They don't want to be responsible for those bills, and they're coming at them hard and fast because what we're asking the bankers to do. Here's the other part of it: the bankers, being our only other assign, have several options. They can either take those BOEs and charge them back against the individuals, which we would like to see. They could trade them with larger banks who have that kind of money. They can take these legal tendered notes to the U.S. Treasury. Here's what happens at the U.S. Treasury, though. The U.S. Treasury is denying them because the judiciary members are not government. So they're wiping their hands of them, saying they're not government employees. We're not responsible for them. They are responsible for commissioners and sheriffs and all elected and appointed officials in their government. So we'll let the Treasury take care of them. Or the banks can go back to the bonding company that put up the bonds in the first place. like travelers. So the bankers have a lot of options. And they can sell that BOE for $10 million more than they paid for it. Let the next person make $10 million, so on. And there are also international options available. We can go to offshore settlement banks who have these kind of services. We can hopefully employ folks like a fellow that was on our call last time, Randy, as I believe he's from Florida, working for J.P. Morgan. If he's on the line, have him get in touch with me, because I think he has some of the systems down well enough that we could employ his services to
I did want to open you. Yeah, I agree. And he is on. He's listening, so he does hear you. I did want to open up the lines to you, and I know people have some questions. So are you ready to take some questions now, Steve?
I am, and I apologize for extending my talk for so long, but there's some information I thought needed to get out there.
That was great.
And we don't want to hold up your next guest, because I think that's going to be of great interest. So how about we do this? I'll take 3 questions.
Okay.
Right here.
Is that appropriate? Okay.
Go ahead, Ronald.
Yeah. Steve, here in California, we can't get lawyers' oaths of office. The California State Bar will not give them to the public. How do we go about doing this if we can't get a lawyer's oath of office?
There are 2 ways of doing it, Ron. One would be to find any contract that they've signed, as in any motions to the court with their signature on them. Again, we can put any contract with a signature on the back of a BOE.
And all we do is copy it, or we attach it to the BOE?
No, you copy it. It has to be a single-page instrument.
Okay.
Or it should be. The second way is that if you find that this attorney has conspired in any way with a judge, you would take the judge's oath and attach it to the back, and on the BOE side, you're going to put the attorney's name.
Got it. I can do that. Thank you.
Next question.
I have one. Is this on? Or are you in line, or is there anyone?
Go ahead. You're good. You're next.
Okay. We want to know how far back we can go, because we had an incident at about 2010 with the county, and with the county judge or the county attorney and the judge, and they all were working together, collusion kind of like together, and we were just doing some things in our house, but we found out that it didn't even need a permit, and they walked in and told us we did. How far back can we go?
Okay, just know that fraud never takes a holiday.
Right.
Neither does commercial justice. You've heard this saying, there is no statute of limitations on fraud.
Right.
There is no lawful limitation on fraud. So gather up the oaths of office going back to however long you want, back to 2008, if that works for you. Gather those up, attach them to a BOE, submit them to your bank, and let the process run its natural course. Okay, something else?
My husband said they wouldn't give them to us, but I have been finding also that we're not finding oath of offices, but I'm not sure that they even had one. But we couldn't get them from the county. I don't think they had an oath of office. One of them that we pulled before, they just made one up, and they didn't even sign it. There wasn't even a signature on it. So we're not getting oath of offices very well in this county.
All right. Well, you can file a CORA violation against the clerks who refuse to give those to you, and the clerks are facing 3 years imprisonment and $10,000 in fines, or $1,000 fines, excuse me. The other option is what I explained to Ron just a minute ago. Find any contract with their signature on it, like a motion to the court or a reply, response, argument, whatever. That is suitable because that is a contract, and it shows their complicity, confederacy, and so on. And you can charge that contract with a BOE. Because it's fraud.
Okay.
Let's keep that open, because oaths of office, just like any other contract. So find anywhere that they've signed their name and a date, and hopefully the name's printed so it's legible. I see it all the time in my court documents. An attorney will sign his name, put his bar card number in there, and the judge will have signed it. That's a contract between an attorney and him. And you can show the conspiracy. You can show the conflict of interest and the violation of the Constitution. That's really all you need to do. And you don't need to go into great lengths in your affidavits other than showing that this oath of office injured me. It was an invasion of my lawful right. That's all you have to show. And it's pretty plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, you did. Do you have any other ones, Rick? That was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, that was very...
My pleasure. Okay.
All right, great. Next question.
One more.
Yeah, this is Keith.
Hi, Keith.
Go, Keith.
All right. I wanted to get some more information, but time's run out now on the IBOE, and also how do you present these BOEs to the bank? Do they deposit them? Do you get a receipt? Do you just hand it to the teller? You know how?
It's very simple. Again, we construct a confirmation of receipt letter, and what we'd like to do is get the bank manager's or bank president's name first, so we can address him directly, and we'll put that on the confirmation of receipt. We'll give in a cover letter directly towards the manager or president, and we'll tell him within one page what our intentions are, what the BOE program is for him. And then in our affidavits of truth and injury is where the instructions really are for the bank. How to process them under several titles and codes and everything. You mentioned IBOEs, International Bills of Exchange. You can tender these offshore, China, Russia, wherever. And those are very efficient mechanisms. But I have posted, and again, we've been doing quite a bit of work here recently for a lot of folks, and this is the very reason that we're going to publish our videos. You're going to see exactly how to process these. And just straightforward, we give the banker all of the notice that we need to do. Keep in mind that our notice does not have to go to the individual we're charging. It goes into the banking system because they know they've violated the law. And we're just notifying the banker. If our BOEs are not paid, we have an additional enforcement tool, and that's called public presentment, public announcement. And thankfully, we have such a wonderful internet. We can post them on Facebook. The last thing public officials want is their name in lights. But guess what? We don't care. You've done wrong. You've violated your oath of office. Sorry. No quarter. We will publish your name, and we will tell the world what you've done to us.
Now, do you have these documents in editable forms?
We do have some editable forms. We do. And I believe I posted those on Randy's site, and we're in the process of creating another blog service where you can go in and identify the document that you'd want. You'd download it onto your computer, and you can put your name in and pretty much a template, and you can run with that if you'd like. There are spaces and places where you can put in your absolute personal injuries, your individual injuries. By the way, anytime you hear me say the word person, please correct me, because I'm trying to stop using that term. And nobody needs to be using the term person because it means slave. And just as a quick note, the 14th Amendment is really under fire right now, folks. That was the good news. Randy asked me earlier what the good news was. The 14th Amendment has been deemed to be unconstitutional in 10 states and growing. What we need to do is get our legislatures, our state legislatures, to repeal that 14th Amendment and the 16th and the Emergency War Powers Act. We will be healing our country in doing that. So, Randy, sir, did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
And
sir.
most of the docs that I think you sent over, I sent them out to everybody tonight, everything you had attached. I think a lot of those were in PDF. Am I right, Keith, or no?
Yeah, they're in PDF and you can't edit them.
Correct. And
Okay.
again, we do have editable versions of that. So.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Roger, is Roger on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm just checking because it's been quiet from you. Are you good if he takes another question or two?
To myself? Yeah, I can.
Okay, all right, perfect. Did you want to take a couple more questions?
Oh, I'd be delighted to. And thank you, Roger. I didn't mean to step on your
Oh, you're
time
fine.
tonight.
Just let me say this real quick.
Yes.
If anybody from the government was listening, they got an education.
Yeah, they did. Yes, they
Well,
did. Okay.
Yes,
Did anybody else have any questions?
On that, Roger, any government agent listening, we're asking you to stand up and do the right thing.
That's true.
Thank you, Roger.
Sorry about the echo there coming from the line. Okay, he's going to take two more questions. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Can you just repeat what he said about a violation to the clerk if it doesn't provide the oaths? I didn't hear the word that he said.
It's
Yes.
a CORA violation, C-O-R-A, correct,
Yep.
Steve?
Correct. Well, CORA is one thing, but if the clerk is absolutely refusing to take your paperwork, as in being presented with copies of whatever, she can be charged up to 3 years in prison, and I believe the fine is $1,000. Now, CORA is a little different. I believe it's a misdemeanor, but this lands her in the pokey for no less than 30 days, and the fine is $500 here in Colorado. You'll have to check your own state because that varies. CORA requests in Colorado may not be the same as they are in California, for instance. So there are laws against these clerks if they refuse to give you the oaths of office. That's dereliction of duty. It's concealment, and it's also considered conspiracy. So if you want to challenge your clerks on not the CORA, but conspiracy, she's looking at some pretty hard time. Did I answer it that time? Was I able to answer that question?
He's not. Okay, you did good on that one, Steve. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, last question. Who's the lucky one? Maybe we
I got a general question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, that is, now I'm a new listener, and what I'd like to do is get some information. You know, my name is Willie, and you know, I like and I study the same thing. I'm going to be able to probably get on your guys' email list or get a you know, somewhere I could get some, you know, some of you guys' work and things that I can study.
Okay. Let me give you a repository site.
Okay.
And you can email to this email address. It's called CL West Slope CLWEST@gmail.com. I'll spell it out for you. CLWEST, S as in Sam, L as in Lima, O as in Oliver, P as in Paul, E as in Echo. So CL Westslope at gmail.com. And that's where we have a repository for questions, and we can float our information back out. And again, we're having a blog site created by a good friend of mine. He's doing a tremendous job at it. And you can actually go in and press the link to any of our documents or videos or whatever you might need.
All right, sound good. I like what I'm hearing. I love Remedy.
Thank you, Willie. Appreciate your listening there, partner.
All right.
Also, Willie, I don't know if you received tonight's email, but if you go to 42action.org, 42action.org, just hit the blue button that says join now. It's totally free. And then you'll get our weekly email, and that tells you who our speakers are and what the topic is and the breakdown of the call. So you can just go there and sign up, cost nothing, and then you know what's up. And so we're glad to have you on. How did you find out about the call?
Well, you know what? One of my buddies in Tennessee had sent me an email, and like I say, I like to hear it because what I do, I get on a blog talk show, and I use a few techniques, and I've got some judges thrown in prison, some of the director of the police department thrown in prison by using the IRS on them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, and they're sitting there now.
All right, outstanding. Well, we love anybody's feedback. So, all right, Steve, thank you so much. We invite you to stay and listen to Roger. He's going to talk about what's going on with the Iraqi dinar. So, again, you've got a open door. Anytime you want to come back, Steve, you got announcements. How long do you think it's going to take them, final question, to get back to you and actually get this settled?
90 days.
And how many are you at
under
now?
law. Yep.
Okay.
We are only at, day 45 on our first filings.
Okay.
We have some other paperwork being generated now that limits their time to 30 days. And in answering some of our affidavits of truth and injury, they only have 10.
Okay.
So it's a little process getting to the BOEs. We can jump into that next time if you'd like.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. And I really thank you for
prepare and
having
bring
me
it
on.
back next week.
Okay. Sure.
We'll put you on at the top of the hour, and we'll just continue down this road because I'm telling you, people are writing notes like crazy, and they're looking at those documents. And I think I know who told Willie. It might have been Keita, because he sent me a message tonight. Those docs are the mother load. So people are super appreciative of all of that. Thank you, Steve, so much. You're welcome to stay on the call. And now we're going to move on to Roger Waters, who's going to talk to us about the Iraqi dinar and what's going on. I got a phone call today that things are happening. So what is going on, Roger?
Well, thank you, Randy. A lot of things are actually happening. The best way to start with, you've heard me talk about the Hebrew calendar and so forth. Let me just say this real quick, because this is very important. And the reason I'm saying this is because it's not, Yahweh doesn't follow the Georgian calendar. He follows his biblical calendar. And today in the Jerusalem Post, it is reported that the harvest of the barley is ripening, which means that the next new moon, which is supposed to be on the 21st of March, that will then begin their new calendar for the next holy year, and that leads us into next year. So now, if that is, if they see that new moon, that two people have to see it, then if they do, then we know when Passover is going to be and the rest of the year is set. And this is very important in what we are going to talk about right now. First of all, let me say this. In late December 2014, Energy Corporation announced that Yankee Nuclear Power Plant would cease operation after 42 years of service. The president of that said it was related to the primary reason for shutdown was the natural gas market in the Northeast. Your electric rates are going up all over the country. Some have gone up almost 120%. There's 99 active nuclear power plants operating in the lower 48 of the U.S. There was 105 last year. 6 have now shut down. 12 more are planned to be shut down before August 2015. Why are they shutting down the nuclear power plants? You do understand they don't have too many of the coal plants left. They're shutting them down too. Why is that? Can you imagine if something was to happen in this country where a major strike would take place and let's say a third of the East Coast is taken out, you just took out about 30 nuclear power plants, and we have a 30-fold Fukushima, Japan taking place in our country. And that would mean that we, in this eastern part of the country, would be sizzled out in less than a year. We'd die. They're shutting these power plants down for a reason. They know something's coming. One of the things that they know is coming, and that's primarily because the CIA is in behind all this, is a war. Not like World War II. It's called a cyber war. They're going to be shutting down the power grid. They're going to be shutting down the internet because they don't want information going in and out, back and forth from Europe to the U.S. to China. They want us in the dark, and it's for a very good reason. They're bringing in the New World Order. They want that man who's going to be that leader signed and operating by January the 11th next year. They know something else is coming up in March next year. Things got to be on the move. In this country today, the Iraqi dinar traded at 1,166.2 to 1 Federal Reserve note. That means it took 1,166 $1 dinars to make 1 U.S. dollar. That is changing because my sources are telling me that 2 days ago, the Iraqi dinar was taken off the critical list on the international banks, and they're getting ready to start revaluing this thing. Now that's important to know because if they do that, it's going to be about 2 to 3 weeks following that the Federal Reserve note could collapse. Because they're going to revalue it up at least $3 per 1 U.S. note. So it's going to help collapse the dollar. It's not going to be the only reason. There is another reason. There are 5 main nations in the BRIC community, and they have already promised to drop the dollar, and when the Iraqi dinar revalues, they are going to drop the dollar, and it's going to have a crushing effect on the Federal Reserve System. Now, remember, out of every nation on planet Earth, there is only 9 nations right now that does not have a central bank affiliated with the Federal Reserve. And those are your Arab and Muslim nations. So, this is why it's taking so long for things to take place. The collapse of the government, the collapse of our economy, it's so vast. As corrupt as it is, as mind-boggling as it is, it's so vast it takes time for this to filter in because it's like an octopus. If one tentacle gets injured, it's got 7 more, but then that one grows back out. It gets strong again. And that's kind of what's happening with the Federal Reserve. It kind of goes down, then it comes back. It's going to take a major blow to deal correctly with these people. But the good news is this. You as individuals need to keep your eye on the Iraqi dinar. You can get on the Jerusalem Post and find out. You can get online and go to an Iraqi newspaper it's in English, and you can find out what it's doing there. You can get on websites for international bankers and find out what the trading is for the day. All these websites will tell you every currency in the world and how it's trading against the U.S. dollar. But you're only going to have 2 to 3 weeks when this thing revalues to do and get done what you need to do. That's it. Because they're going to a new currency. And right after that, a cyber attack is planned to take place, probably by our own people, and then blame it on ISIS. That way we can go to war against ISIS and try to take over those other 9 nations. That's their plan. And by the way, this is all headed up by the United Nations. You also understand with no communication, because you won't have cell phones, you won't have ATM machines, you'll have nothing. All the satellites will be down. You do understand that the Congress in D.C. passed a law that would allow the UN to come in and take everybody's weapons. They did that 2 years ago. Everything is set to take place. So we are sitting on the verge of having a major event take place in this country. If you can, if you have bought dinars in the past, I would be watching this really close, because when it gets above $2, $3 to one of the U.S. dollars, you need to act and act quickly. Now, most people don't know this because they're not saying this. I got this from another individual who got it from a source who works in international banking down south. So this is where I'm getting my information from. Plus, I'm getting it from the Jerusalem Post and a couple of Iraqi newspapers. So keep your eyes and your ears open. Now, I want to read something, because this fits right into what Steve was saying. And by the way, I had no idea what he was really going to talk about. Well, talk about an education. When I read this, some of you may remember it. If I were the devil, if I was the prince of darkness, I would, of course, want to engulf the whole earth in darkness. I would have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population. But I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I should set forth, however necessary, to take over the United States. I would begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve. Do as you please. To the young, I would whisper the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of God creating man. I would confide that what is bad is good and what is good is square. In the ears of the young marrieds, I would whisper that work is debasing, that cocktail parties are good for you. I would caution them not to be extreme in religion, in patriotism, in moral conduct. And the old I would teach to pray. I would teach them to say after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. If I were the devil, I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that everything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I would threaten TV with dirtier movies, and then, if I were the devil, I'd get organized and I'd infiltrate unions and urge more loafing and less work, because idle hands usually work for me. I'd peddle narcotics to who I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. And if I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect discipline emotions. Let those run wild. I would designate the atheist to front for me before the highest courts in the land, and I would get the preachers to say she's right. With flattery and promises of power, I could get the courts to rule what I construe as against God in favor of pornography. And thus I would evict God from the courthouse, and then from the schoolhouse, and then from the House of Congress, and then in his own churches. I would submit psychology for religion. I would defy science because that way men would become smart enough to create super weapons, but not wise enough to control them. If I were Satan, I'd make a symbol of Easter an egg, and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I would take from those who have, and I would give it to those who want it, until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And then my police state would force everybody back to work. Then I would separate families, putting children in uniform, women in coal mines, and objectors in slave camps. In other words, if I were Satan, I'd just keep doing what he's already doing. That was said on April the 3rd, 1965, by Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey, he was so good. I grew up listening to him.
Did he know what he was saying?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned about the cyber attack and the dinars. Now, what good is it going to be to cash in the dinars if there's going to be a cyber attack? Then doesn't that mean they're just going to take it from you in the bank anyway?
Not necessarily. You're going to have a couple of weeks because the cyber attack's not going to happen until 2 or 3 weeks after the dinar revalues. That's
Right.
when the attack will take place.
But what are you going to do? Let's say you exchange your dinars and you got $5 million US dollars. What can you do with $5 million US dollars to secure it in 3 weeks if there's going to be a cyber attack?
Well, you got to move quick. You got to go store up some food, go store up some water. You might want to buy some winter clothes. You might want to buy some space heaters with kerosene. Those kind of things, because next winter could be very interesting. And you're not going to have long to do it.
What's that, Keith?
I'm saying you're talking about buying $5 million worth?
Yeah, and
No.
for you and all your friends.
Yeah.
You better spend that baby quick. Get some gold, get some silver, and get every survival supply you need. What he's saying is you only got 2 to 3 weeks. So put it in a, you can't eat gold or silver. It's going to be too heavy to go on the run with. So you can use it for a fast destination. You can go walk in and pay somebody in the mountains some quick cash. You can buy some quick silver and gold, and you can buy your survival supplies pretty fast as well. I mean, you got to move quick. You could buy a herd of cattle then once it all goes down, and then use them for barter. You just got to be creative and think. So
see, the bad thing now is most people aren't creative enough to even do that. They're so dumbed down with everything that's going on around them, they won't think about preparing. This is what they call a Shemitah year. In the Hebrew, the Shemitah year was to store up a year because it was the 7th year, and you're to give the land a rest. So you're supposed to store up everything on the 6th year, which is where we're coming to a close of. And whenever this new moon comes out on the 21st, in Israel, that's going to begin the Shemitah year. In other words, they don't grow anything in Israel this year. They've already stored up. Well, that's God's pattern, Yahweh's pattern, not here in the United States. And so people really don't know about this. There are a few that do. So this is why Randy says, if you've got that much money to go spend, get yourself, get your neighbors, get your rest of your family, get them prepared. Because when this goes down, I can't sit here and tell you with surety exactly how it's going to go down, but I can tell you it's not going to be good. And then next year is even going to be worse because we got events taking place that this whole world's going to get rocked on. So we're in for some interesting times. So that would be what my suggestion would be, to prepare as best you can. And the reason I say that is because Jesus said, Yeshua said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it's going to be in the days before I return. He didn't say in the days of Lot. He didn't say in Abraham. He didn't say in Moses. He said in Noah. And there was worldwide destruction in the days of Noah. I'm not saying there's going to be a flood, but there's going to be some places on this planet that aren't going to make it. And we need to prepare. He's given us the warning. Now, are we going to be obedient and take it? That's my question. So that's why, you know, that 3-week period, I always wondered why they would allow 3 weeks. Well, see, they've been preparing, but you got to remember, under Denver, Colorado, they got a city underneath that airport that's bigger than Denver itself. It stretches for miles underground. They've dug it out in the last 30 years. I got pictures of it. And people from all over the country and some from other nations are going to have to come flying their Learjets into the Denver International Airport. When you see on the news Denver International becoming very famous in a hot spot with Learjets, you know everybody's running for cover. Something's about to go down. That would be your first sign. So they themselves need to get to where they're at, to where they need to go, and that's under Denver. I'm not going to guarantee they'll come out, but that's where they're going to go in. So keep your ears, your eyes open. Keep a watch on the Iraqi dinar. Keep a watch on the U.S. dollar, because they're going to start fluctuating very seriously in the next couple of months. And then after that, I don't know what's going to happen for sure. Nobody does. We just know that the Illuminati, they're trying to bring in the New World Order, and that's a big reason why they're going to be shutting as much stuff down as they can, so nobody can see what they're doing. And then when they bring it back up, it's going to be a whole different type of internet. What do you think this net neutrality is all about? It's not to make things easier for you. It's to make things easier for them to govern. And that's what they want. By the way, that's coming out of Denver, Colorado, too. So things are going to get interesting.
Any other questions or comments for Roger? And I know you, Brad, I don't know if you're muted or not, but, you pay attention to the Iraqi dinar. What have you seen? Are you on track with what Roger's saying?
Well, yeah, I do. I have a couple sources that I follow out of Texas who's connected back channel to a congressman who's also saying that it is very, very, very imminent. In fact, what I heard is that it's supposed to be the revalue within the next probably 48 hours. Now, I stopped a long time ago holding my breath on these things because they seem to come and go, but that is the latest that I've heard, and so I don't know. That's kind of my time frame. The time frame that I'm hearing is everything is done. There's no holds up anymore. They're waiting for their own kind of pride reason, but there's no political reasons out there. There's nothing that they're waiting on, that deadlines they have to meet. It literally could go at any time. I'm wondering if that's what Roger's sharing as well.
Actually, it is. I know that there are some things that they need to still get in place. How long it takes for them to get that in place, I don't know. The powers that be over the financial part of the world, they're the ones calling the shots. And I do know that they want the U.S., the Federal Reserve note, to go down. They want to bring in a new currency. And the only way to do that is two ways: to bring in the dinar and have it revalue at a higher rate, which will then start to decline rapidly for the U.S. dollar. And then the BRIC nations will actually do what they've already signed a contract with each other to do, and that is to completely 100% drop the U.S. dollar. It will be totally worthless. I mean, it's worthless now, but at that point in time, it'll be so worthless that even the Federal Reserve can't do anything with it. And that's going to cause a collapse. Now, that's another reason why they're bringing in a cyber attack. They want to finish up what they started, 150 years ago by bringing in a new world order. And I think anybody that has studied the face of the dollar bills can tell you that's what it's about. There's signs and signals on the face and the backside of the dollar that tells you the story about what they had in mind. And if you followed anything with the Illuminati and over the years, and you know what their game plan is, Agenda 21. I mean, this all is coming to a head here, and I agree with you that it could happen in the next 2 or 3 days. I don't know if it will, though, because there's still too many things they have to get prepared. But I can promise you, once those things are prepared, anything's possible. And that's why we got to keep watching.
Well, hopefully there's time for the BOAs to pay out and some of this remedy takes place, although, who knows? Maybe they're going to get rid of it before that all can happen. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Roger?
Is anyone know that there is something published, the U.S. Army Special Operation Command? There will be a drill from July 15th to 15th of September this year for 8 weeks.
I was going to talk about that. Go ahead, Gloria, since you've got it up. This is very important what she's about to say, you guys. And I didn't know you knew about it, Gloria, but I was going to talk about that. This very well could be where a false flag comes in. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's a prime opportunity for them. Go ahead, Gloria.
And there will be states like California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. And it says the area will be outside of the federal zone, federal property. And it also mentioned that why Texas? And it says the United States Special Operation Command has conducted numerous exercises in Texas because Texans are historically supportive of efforts to prepare our soldiers, airmen, Marines, and sailors to fight the enemies of the United States. So, very interesting. So basically then there's a website that actually gave this manual. It talks about they are going to taking out a red list, I guess, people that are going against the Constitution, going against the tyranny or something, but I don't know what the red list is, and possibly they could be showing off at 3 a.m. and taking these people out. So I don't know.
If anybody wants to go to Infowars.com, and I know a lot of people, don't want to listen to something there, but it's also been red linked on the Drudge Report, and I give them a lot of credibility. The headline is Feds preparing to invade Texas. List state as hostile. And some participants will be wearing civilian attire and driving civilian vehicles. So people are not going to know what's real and what's not real when this is happening. Because when they do these operations, for example, Sandy Hook, which was completely a hoax, and if anyone on this call doesn't realize that, just go look up Sandy Hook hoax, look up Wolfgang Halbig, Halbig, who's been investigating it to the nines, and zero cooperation, death threats, and everything else. When they pull these drills off, they fake the entire country. The media all gets in line like little whip boys, and they do the bidding of whatever the role play is. So if they're in the state of Texas and they're saying Texas is hostile, and some of the words that they say are hostile, what makes them hostile is they talk about the Constitution, they're former military, they mention the Republic, things like that. And so the smaller caption is, Alex Jones talks with InfoWars reporter and Army veteran Joe Biggs about a newly released military document detailing the U.S. Army's plan to wage war on the American people. You're not on mute, sir, whoever that was. So you guys need to check the article out and just make sure you're ready. And by the way, if you scroll down from that article, the commenters are pretty good from what I was reading, the comments telling you what to do, how to prepare, things like that. It was usually they get crazy in the comments on there, but it was actually pretty good. And Gloria is right. There is a document that's out there talking about it. And why wouldn't there be? They don't like us. So did you want to say anything else on that?
There's a contact information on this manual command, and people could actually get in touch with these people and find out what really is the truth. I don't know if they're going to tell the truth, but they have information, emails and the cell phone, the work number, the name of the person. So to send this PDF link to Randy, and Randy could distribute it.
All right, excellent on that. Also, there's a video out, and thank you, Wayne, if you're on the call. You were one of the people that sent it to me. I did get it a few times today. Everybody should go look it up, and it is, let me just click on it real quick to get the caption. It's on YouTube, and it says, USA Civil War Looming, Marine versus Marine, Cop versus Cop 2015. That's a lot of words. USA Civil War Looming, Marine versus Marine, Cop versus Cop 2015. And the person who posted it is Fisher of Men, no spaces. So you can also look up Fisher of Men, and it should bring up all of their videos. And it's actually about a 10-minute speech with Oath Keepers president and founder, Stuart Rhodes, and he's talking to a room of militia, military, ex-military, patriots, cops, ex-cops, you name it. They're in this room, and he's talking to them, and it is an incredible 10-minute speech. So make sure you guys all go listen to that. Next week, we're starting with Steve Curry, don't forget. Now, I want to take a few minutes. Anybody have any cases they want to bring up?
Hey, Randy, this is Roger.
Yes, hey, Roger, go ahead.
I'm going to have to go ahead and get off. I need to get the hay.
All right. Well, we super appreciate you being on again. Thank you for the dinar update and the rest of the information. You have a super night. Sorry we kept you up longer. I know we did. So thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right. I appreciate it. You're welcome, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Sounds great.
Hey, Randy, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I see all these conspiracy articles about like 9/11 and Sandy Hook. The question I have is, has anybody ever thought about this? Is where are these people at? If they're, they got funerals going on and all this stuff. And I'll give you an example. 9/11. One of my coworkers was on that airplane that supposedly crashed into the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. His family is suffering because, as far as they're concerned, he's dead. Mm-hmm. Okay, they've got a memorial out here in El Segundo, California, commemorate him and another coworker that died on that plane. So my question is, if it was all a false flag and all made up, where are these people at?
Well, my guess, and anybody else can weigh in on it, I would assume they're at the bottom and somebody's got an echo here. Take your phone off speaker, Ronald, if you would. Gives it an echo. Okay. I think they're either at the bottom of an ocean or, and I know that sounds cruel, or they're completely controlled somewhere.
Randy?
But obviously they're never going to see you. Do you know, Chris? Is that you?
Well, it's my suggestion, based upon some observation experience, and we'll call it Occam's razor, that if you provide enough funds to people and offer them a witness protection program where they would go away, evaporate, and assumed new identities and never contact their families again, many would be in agreement to that. As we know, many of the purported hijackers, which was totally amazing, they found some of their IDs not burned, mutilated, or anything else by an FBI agent laying on the street after the alleged buildings came tumbling down, which was preposterous. That there are so many things that defy reality concerning that, notwithstanding Building 7, which was never hit by a plane, which was ordered pulled by Larry Silverstein, who had a fiduciary interest in profiting from insurance on those buildings he had acquired for a few $1 million prior to that, and then insured for multi-millions after the fact and collected on them.
Yeah, people could get paid off. I mean, I couldn't even imagine it. It's not even conceivable for me to ever take any amount of money to leave my family. Never. So,
excuse me, Randy, I tend to agree with you. I think they did away with those people. The planes that hit the towers were remote controlled. There were no 19 Arab hijackers. That was all a ruse. And it was all set up because they wanted to blame the terrorist activity on these Middle Eastern terrorists, because the agenda was they were getting ready to go to war over there, and they had to have a protocol as well as a pretext in order to do that, and 9/11 was what that was all about. There were no Arab terrorists involved in that at all. It was done by the Mossad, Israeli Mossad, and the American CIA. It was an inside job from beginning to end.
yeah, and I'm not saying somebody, people kill people for a pair of $20 sneakers. So to take a large sum of money that already don't like their family, I could, see plenty of people doing that, just because of the immorality of our world that we're living in today. But I agree with David. I believe that those people were done away with somewhere else, but not into those buildings, not into the ground in Pennsylvania, and not into the Pentagon. They have done. Just imagine how many cameras are around the Pentagon, and they went around and swooped up all the footage so that nobody could share it. Why would they ever do that and not release it? Because it was a missile of some sort, a drone, I don't know, but it was not a plane that had any human beings on it. And when you I've got coconut trees here, okay? And when a coconut tree falls and hits the ground, it doesn't forge a hole into the ground. It hits the ground, bounces. And then the juice inside splatters everywhere if it cracks open. A plane hitting the ground, as in the one in Pennsylvania, doesn't all of a sudden just make a big hole into the ground and nothing's visible larger than a phone book. It's just preposterous that could even happen. It defies any logic. Go look up any burning building. Only parts fall, and they don't fall straight down. You're usually left with 3/4 of a building still standing there, and it's a skeleton. And there's so much of that story that's just it's such bunk. It's just unbelievable that they've gotten away with it. Just complete dumbing down of people, I would imagine. But yeah, my thought is they're dead. But who am I?
Randy, there was a very interesting woman who was a multi-year experienced flight attendant on, I think it was George Riley earlier this week, who had Rebecca Ross, I believe was the name, and I'm looking for the name of her book that she wrote, but it's just getting released. But she had gone through and checked multitudes of these supposed phone calls. Of course, the fact that you can't make phone calls from the air because there's no cell towers up in the air, and therefore no ability to get a signal to make a phone call from. she had listened and concluded from the conversations, being intimately, completely aware of the insides of planes and what you would see going and coming from locations, that these were fabricated phone calls made from inside a hangar by people who really weren't authentic aircraft workers. And in fact, there was one that the woman had made this pleading sounding call to her purported family, and after she completed it, she handed the phone to somebody, and they said, "Oh, that was a wonderful job. You did just great." This was really an American Reichstag, the Fourth Reichstag in this case, event that was fabricated to precipitate fear-mongering here in America to cover up the loss of $2.3 trillion that was circumvented and stolen, apparently, by Rumsfeld and some of his cronies, that were taken out by a missile into the side of the Pentagon, not a plane, because there was no plane refuse on the lawn of the Pentagon after the alleged plane impact. And it hit precisely in the communications room of Naval Intel Operations, who was investigating the disappearance of those trillions of dollars of funds that were circumvented and spirited away by Rumsfeld and his cronies, the Black Ops group, with Bush, Cheney cabal, and other actors and agents of the Black Ops intel groups within government. Such as, right now, you've got John McCain and Colonel Mullally, who run the PSYOPs operation of the Al-Qaeda / what's this new one that they got over there? Boko Haram, and then there's the, what's the jihadist terrorists that we're all scared to death about now? I can't think of the name of them.
Which we're not really, because even, the beheadings, first of all, they block all that out. And thank you, 816. You just had some tapping noise. That's why I had muted you the first time. And now they've come out. It was a headline story that they were just faking the beheadings to put fear in somebody. And if you actually look, this to you, Ronald, for example, the Sandy Hook kids, if you look at the 2012 Super Bowl, the kids that sang in the halftime were the kids that supposedly died at Sandy Hook, the only kids that were actually paraded out in front of anybody and any kind of a still shot. Those photos of those kids, I personally believe, were taken years before, because there's incredible footage out there of the kids that sang at the 2012 Super Bowl that had the exact same facial features as the kids that supposedly died. If you looked at them one by one, and there's a guy who did break it down one by one, the facial features are the same. The boy-to-girl ratio was the same. And the 2012 Super Bowl halftime was actually about as satanic of a ritual as you could get, and that's when they played the Maserati Now We Strike commercial, which is so eerie it makes every hair on your body stand up. If you've never looked it up, look up Illuminati Maserati Super Bowl commercial, and it was called Now We Strike. Very, very, it was a message to the people, I can guarantee you. And then just the symbolism that was going on in the 2012. They've done it in many, but 2012 was important because those kids that supposedly died were the singers at halftime.
I've heard one other thing too, Randy, about 9/11. That when that building 7 fell, that the whole purpose of that thing was to kill the announcement of Nasara. I've heard that too. So.
I have heard that. I think there was many, many reasons why they played that out like they did. And the whole point of actually getting to this whole topic, you guys, was the story that came out today that's the top story on several websites about the feds invading Texas and calling it a hostile state and who the hostile people supposedly are. And those documents are out there. Whether something's going to happen or not, they're perfectly set up because that's what they always do, right? They say, oh, well, a drill was going on at the same time. And so the media runs with it like it was a real story. And blood isn't really splattered, and people aren't really dead, and no photos of anything real ever come out. Even Gabby Giffords, I totally believe it was a hoax. If you look at the still shot, after the supposed shooting, and she had that person who was her assistant for like 3 days. Well, he came out on every news station and said, I held her after she was shot. Well, as you see him walk away, he's clean as a whistle, not a drop of blood anywhere. So if he held her gaping open head from a gunshot wound, there would be blood everywhere. It would have been syrupy all over the ground. It doesn't exist, you guys. It was a total lie. Yeah, total hoax. And if you go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say that interesting that you should mention that one, because that's the one where the first suicidal psychotropic drugged out looking Gerald Lee Loeffner was the reported shooter, like supposedly the lone wolf shooter, which is a frequently employed scenario by the FBI and this administration specifically, as we saw also in Aurora, Colorado, with Jimmy Neutron Holmes, who had a tie to the World Bank, with his father being there's just so many things that tie to other things that it's absurd, preposterous to believe that these were not government-inspired crisis act or event managed scenarios. Now, there may have been some people who actually were sacrificed to Moloch during the execution of these for the radical plan advancement, but it's precisely these state-sponsored terrorist events that have been poked down our throats so long that now everything we see that has any dire nature to it is generally presumed to be a government-inspired false flag event. From Columbine to Oklahoma City to 9/11 to the Boston bombing to Sandy Hook to Aurora, Colorado to Tucson, Arizona to Andrew J. Matalib in Times Square, the underwear bomber, to Padilla, who we all have to take our shoes off to go through a metal detector to have them scanned because of state-sponsored terrorism, and giving a pair of tennis shoes that supposedly had explosives in them but never did. So this is absolutely preposterous.
Yeah, and if the media would actually pick up the story, let's just take that one and think about how that totally changed all of our lives. The guy that was supposedly the underwear bomber, right, he had no passport, and a man in a totally decked out suit, after the stewardess behind the counter tells him, no, he can't get on the plane, a guy in a suit whisks him away to get him on the plane. And here's what was happening. A man who was an attorney and his wife from Michigan were sitting there playing cards with each other, and the man watched as that whole thing happened and described it to a T. The underwear bomber actually called that guy as a witness for him, because not for the state, but for him, because that man witnessed somebody in a public official capacity taking the underwear bomber guy away and making sure he was on the plane. So that whole thing was staged.
The underwear guy bomber was Andrew J. Matalib.
Yes, and the attorney came out. I heard him because the judge wasn't hearing anything, wouldn't listen to anything, and basically, none of his testimony was put in print. He had to go to alternative media. Thank goodness there was an outlet, and so he whistle blew about it. But he said, when that all happened, and he was the witness for the actual underwear guy. He got on air. I heard him, and he said everyone needs to just leave this country. Our country is gone. But I say we stand and fight. I say we stand here and keep doing what we're doing, and we get, Steve Curry to teach us stuff, and you and Gloria and all the other people that share their cases, and we stand here and we this is our country. This is where my ancestors came. All the people that have shed blood supposedly in the name of this country. Well, now it's time. I'm not saying, because I know they're all listening, I'm not saying it's time to go shoot a gun. I'm saying it's time to stay here and stand up to the corruption. That's to prevent my door getting kicked in tonight. So I'm not going to start a thing, but I am going to continue to give the platform to educate people. Anybody else want to bring up anything? Any cases? Your phone's jittery, Gloria. Gloria. Your phone's sketchy.
Okay, I will call.
No, now you're good. Oh, she got clear. Anyone else while we're waiting for her? I just want to say that I'm super proud to be associated with all you guys, and that you all stand, and that you're all in these various fights of your own into the courts, and I'm just really proud to be a part of it, because if I sat there on my couch every night watching Dancing with the Stars, I'd want to, take my life. I couldn't even stand to live like that, and I don't know how people do it, so.
Well, Randy, as you, I pay pretty close attention. I had a couple of things here recently. Mm-hmm. This bank battle that I'm in Wisconsin is very intriguing, because when the defendant, the bank, whenever I filed the complaint, paid the fee, is now trying to hijack, Shanghai the case, and run it as his case instead of my case, I find that diametrically insane. Who would let a serial child rapist or murderer run the case for him? We would never have any cases in court for him, because everyone would choose not to convict themselves of the crimes they're accused of. It's absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. And now they've sent me they tried to give the illusion that they sent a notice of 26F discovery. They were going to do it telephonically, supposedly, after I sent them a letter refusing their invitation to meet in their location and suggesting 2 future dates and letting them know that I wasn't going to allow them to rush to discovery on the 26th of this month. And then they called me on the day that they had said they were going to call without my permission, without my assent or agreement. In fact, I lawfully noticed them that I did not do so. They then sent a letter back claiming they were motioning for the discovery in opposition to what I had suggested. So they misrepresented the facts to the court, which I'm going to have to present to the court now. And they demanded that I show up Monday for a 26F discovery conference. Well, one, I'm not ready for that. It's a rush to the discovery. 2, I never agreed to any magistrate rulings. I guess they prefer to presume to assume, and I find it a rebuttable presumption, that if you don't tell them you don't want a magisterial adjudication, then they presume to assume that you agree to it. And that's blatantly false and wrong-minded thought. Mm-hmm. So these are really curious things that you find these hotshot attorney firms do. Is they try to steal your case from you, operate off of your investment in filing the case, and try to hijack your case and turn it to their own advantage against you. It's absolutely diabolical.
Wow.
Nonsense. Insane.
So what's your next move? What's going on?
Say again?
I said, so what is your next move? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to put a motion to strike the meeting that I did not agree to, and that I noticed them and advised them of the court. I'm going to give them a copy of the letter that I have. It's about 9 pages long or 6 pages long that I was ready to send to the attorney today or tomorrow. I got it ready on my computer. All I got to do is print it out and send it. But then I'm going to send a motion to the court to expand time to set the discovery date beyond what they're recommending, because I never agreed to any such thing. In fact, they escalated it 3 days prior to what the opposing attorney had suggested, and the court seems to be aiding and abetting the rush to discovery, which I find to be particularly contentious, and demands to be vacated, set aside, and voided.
Wow. Okay.
But that tells you what kind of demonic influences you're dealing with in these places.
Mm-hmm. You were going to say something else.
Well, also, I was at a Child Protective Family Services meeting yesterday where there's an easy Title 42 1983 suit, Child Protective Services, on a hearsay complaint by a judge without any first-party competent knowledge, called down and said there were fear for the child of the 7 that had been taken before. Now she just had number 8 back in December here in Las Vegas instead of in Utah, and the judge tried to insinuate that because of her past history, she had reasonable cause to believe there was a imminent danger, a hazard to this child when the children had never been in hazard before. It was all state-created illusions of hazards and pretenses to CYA. In fact, I went to a meeting with the CPS officials with them after they'd stolen the child, and I saw the final complaint as full of all sorts of untruths, misstatements, mischaracterizations, painting in the worst possible light, fabricating circumstances, facts, and so on and so forth. It's all a CYA fairy tale fabricated by this court up in Utah to try to cover their rear ends when they absolutely withheld exculpatory, mitigating, extenuating circumstances that would have exonerated the parents. Because they never did anything to damage their children. It happened at school and away from school when they were taken during school hours. Therefore, they blamed the victim parents and children and tried to claim they were delusional for thinking any such thing happened when it absolutely had verifiable, and they knew, they heard from the children independent of any parents being around, independently by more than one child confirmed that these things actually did happen. And further, that they were furthermore sexually tortured and abused under their foster cares than they had ever been in the home of their family because they had never been abused in their family home.
Oh, no. Are they back now with their parents or not?
Oh, no. The state still got them here. And so I guess I'm going to have to Title 42, 1983, DCF workers and the police, 5 or 6 of them, no warrant, no exigent circumstances, no validatable oath or affirmation or affidavit to support the no warrant. They did not leave a receipt of the private property they stole. They didn't leave a copy of any complaint, any judicial signed order, or any affidavit supporting such judicial signed order as an affidavit determinant to get a judge's sign. They merely forced their way in. They hit the baby in the head when they forced the door open to take the baby into custody to protect it, supposedly. It's absolutely insane.
Wow. Poor family.
Anyway, that's about all I got for you tonight, unless somebody wants to answer for questions later on.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Uh-huh.
You're a stand-up guy. Go ahead.
Chris, I got something for you, Chris. Don't forget to file the TCPA against the debt collectors with the unlawful phone call. That is
absolutely.
$500. Yeah, that's the minimum of $500 back in your pocket. It'll help pay for some of your time that you're spending on this.
I know.
The other thing I've got going on, I wanted to ask you about this. I have a friend of mine. This is Dave up in Kansas City. I've got a friend of mine. I've been trying to help out. He's actually going through a divorce. Separated from the soon-to-be ex for approximately 4 months. 3 children. One of the reasons that he has decided to not be in the household anymore is to get away from the living conditions that
I'm on it.
She's actually a very, very unhygienic, and the children are living in squalor. Now, the problem arises that he works at night, just like I do. So his attorney has told him that it's very hard for him to get custody of the children. Here's a prime example. 9 weeks ago, the family cat topped up some hairballs on the youngest son's bed. And so the youngest son refuses to sleep in his bed. They have no way of taking care of themselves, their younger children, and the mother won't wash the bed sheet. Children don't have clean clothes, and if they want something to eat, they're actually going to the cupboard and pulling out canned goods and eating up their own meals out of the canned goods, and they have to wash a dish if they want a clean dish. And what they're doing is they're going from the dirtiest or the cleanest dirty clothes to have clothes to wear to school. So my question to you is, do you know of any way that he may actually benefit? Well, I need to tell you one more thing too. she actually had expressed that she was suicidal in several emails to different people that my friend got a hold of, and she actually had assaulted my friend physically, tore her shirt off. The sheriff's had to come and they basically take her away. He never filed assault charges against her. So the question I'm posing to you, sir, do you know of any way that maybe he could possibly use these things to actually extract the children from those living conditions, use those, for his benefit, get the kids out of there?
My suggestion to you, and this is a plausible possibility, is that if he has a support family network of his parents or perhaps siblings.
He's an adopted child, no other siblings.
All right, well then probably the best thing is if he has a girlfriend, a paramour, a fiance, or a new wife perhaps lined up.
Right. Well, he is seeing a girl that makes him very happy now.
Or even we'll call him a nurse mother. Call him there's a parte. What is it called?
Nanny.
Well, yeah, affectionately a nanny. There's another name for it.
Right.
Line one up with the credentialed authorities, and I would do some photo documentation of the conditions that you said.
Yeah.
And I would introduce that as evidence. But there's a real dangerous aspect of this by advising the state or the county of the conditions. It could expose the children to be taken into protective custody, allegedly. And so having a backdrop to fall back on to provide care for them and sleep-in abilities whenever you're not or he's not there working, so that you have it covered and have answers to all their potential questions so that he can validate that he is well equipped to deal with his absence while he's working, to put them into trusted, approved, caring hands so they will thrive and survive as opposed to living in the squalor that you suggested in a safe environment to perpetuate their growth and functional development as opposed to being treated in a very disrespectful and perhaps they would claim dangerous manner. That's what CPS would always claim.
Right.
That's about your best situation, is to put yourself in the prepared, well prepared, before you go in there. Petition would have an individual or have an affidavit from the individual and have credible credentials or advertisements or documents, maybe resume from that individual to introduce into court record to approve their claims of authority and proper training to be able to afford that style of care that would be requisitive. I don't know the children's age, but I'm going to guess that someone might be fairly young.
Right. Well, that actually is directly in line with what I had told him prior. But there again, that was me speculating. So that's I'm glad that you actually concur with what I said. I was hesitant to have him call the Child Protective Services, but when they did show up, they did not have a court order to come in. However, the soon-to-be ex, she was given 48 hours to clear the living quarters of the debris. So she actually did get that picked up, so we did get that accomplished. But
well, remember, CPS is like the Hotel California. You can check.
Yeah, you can't check it out. Well, since they're separated, this is what I suggested to him. He does have means to support her. She's unemployed. She's wanting maintenance. She's wanting half of his paycheck and all this other stuff, so she can stay at home. And I don't want to talk bad about the woman, but she doesn't wish to work.
Hello?
So, yes.
Yes, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Is Wendy here?
If I wasn't, there wouldn't be a call.
Hi, Gloria.
I don't think that's Gloria. If that's me, I'll call you after the call if you want.
Sorry.
Okay. I don't think that was Gloria. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
So I was just saying that does fall in line, and I think it's sad that he's in this situation, but it is what it is. So I've been trying to help him out. Of course, we all try and help those people that are in need. That's what we do. So.
We're talking about foreclosure now?
No, we're talking about a child custody case.
We can go there, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to know about the American Wholesale Lenders? I just found out some really good stuff about them.
Yeah, go ahead, throw it out.
American Wholesale Lenders was never licensed to be an original loan, a loan originator in any of the 50 states. They actually filed as being a DBA, which I'm sure everybody here knows what a DBA is, so I'm not going to go into that.
Doing business as,
Unfortunately, a DBA doesn't fall under the 12 UCC as being able to originate loans. Well, they did it on their own accord. So what we've got going on is a new company actually moved in later on after the defunct American Wholesale Lenders countrywide faltered, fell to the wayside, leaving 3.8 million loans or fictitious accounts that they created out on the market. I currently have 4 of those 3.8, and I have one of my properties foreclosure was originated by American Wholesale Lender. So I'm elbow deep in the American Wholesale Lender. Now, another company came along behind them that labeled themselves as American Wholesale Lenders, Inc. They actually were a lending facility or institution, which they were licensed and paid corporate taxes, not like the predecessors with a similar name. So, Bank of America, using the name of Countrywide, since they purchased the rights to the Countrywide's notes and obligations, came in and filed a lawsuit against American Wholesale Lenders, Inc., which then came out and said, no, they never were a corporation. It's a completely different entity, and they fought them in court. And it's an extremely interesting read. If anybody wants to go in and read that, that's Bank of America, Countrywide, and America's Wholesale Lenders versus America's Wholesale Lenders, Inc. And it actually spells out a lot of the indiscretion in the banking industry that Bank of America has perpetrated upon the people, including Countrywide, including they point out the predatory lending practices and actually detail them out, how they went about doing it as a defense against these people. So very interesting read. Now, fast forward, all this information that these courts know about has been swept under the rug, of course. They don't want this to come out. I did a QWR on my properties. I just received that back 4 days ago. That falls under the 3 UCC 302, 303, 407, and the 9 UCC codes. And those are very interesting reads, too. My notes were never endorsed. And it's like a title to a car. You have to endorse them whenever you transfer anything. Legally, it has to be legally created, and then it has to be transferred legally, lawfully, however you want to say it. But my notes were never transferred. Come to find out, between 71 and 81% of the notes that were created by Countrywide were never endorsed. They were never sold. They were never stamped and turned into a bearer's bond so they could enter a servicing and pooling. They were never transferred lawfully. And yet all these people kept investing money into the servicing and pooling so that they could have this as retirement. Once Countrywide decided they had enough fun with all this, they sucked all the money out, they closed the doors and sold their assets, fictitious and otherwise, to Bank of America. Now Bank of America is setting on all these loans the Countrywide says they created and they serviced, and yet none of them were ever, well, I take that back, between 78 and 81% of these reportedly have never been transferred from the original creditor. So we're looking at millions and millions and millions and millions of foreclosures that these people have brought in the courts. And the judges come in and steamroll right over these people. Even when you stand up and say, here's the note, it was never endorsed. The judge goes, did you take out a loan? And the people go, no. Did you pay it? No. Okay, case closed. Rules for the banks.
Well,
anyway,
the correct response to that one is this is not about the debt or the loan. This is about the bad faith acts of the alleged pretender lender.
Exactly.
Who is a third-party debt collector.
That's for people like us. We are not the least educated consumers.
Exactly. Also, here's one for you. There's a case called Morgan Drexen, CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau versus Morgan Drexen. And it's really about a hotshot, big advertising scam plan pretending to be a legal firm and with legal representatives, which is formed under what they term the attorney model of RICO, actually, if you want to be technical about it. But what they did is they put all kinds of national ads and blitzed the networks with the ability to modify or to protect your home from foreclosure, and then they would use that supposedly as a lost leader to draw people in and then sell them over to a bankruptcy protection plan, which required some upfront fees and a monthly assignment to supposedly stave it off. And so they defined what they were as engagement attorneys or perhaps network attorneys who had to robo-sign hundreds of documents per day, supposedly, and then they had legal actors who pretended to be legal representatives for Morgan Drexen, who were not attorneys or had any legal training whatsoever, but they would try to develop the illusion they had so to dupe the people into coughing up their information. They may have been even using them to identify people's homes they could steal, from what I was able to discern. And so this is precisely what I've run across in my operation. I have a multi-state crime network operated under the Tiffany Bosco firm, who was a former vice president with J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, who operates in the same building on the same floor right next door with connecting offices and directorates, according to the Secretary of States of Arizona and Nevada's documents that shows the principals of the Tiffany Bosco firm as being the principal controlling directorates. And so what they do is they operate in conjunction with some other legal firms in other states like Utah and probably California and no telling where else, and operate a multi-state criminal racketeering network of stealing homes because they get a pipeline from J.P. Morgan Chase, which is nothing but a pure predatory third-party debt collector having bought their interest from the alleged bulk purchase and acquisition agreement. Purchase is the same thing as buying debt, speculation, gambling, or wagering, and trying to enjoy unjust, egregious enrichment by developing payments and seducing people into paying people who are third-party debt collectors under the guise of being a true party of interest. And the FDIC is like, along with the Office of Thrift Supervision and Secretary of Treasury, are likely culpable, liable, and suitable because they aided and abetted the cover-up of the true nature of the transaction whereby J.P. Morgan Chase allegedly gained an interest, or acquired, they like to call it, in J.P. Morgan Chase's assets and certain liabilities. And so when you grasp the nature of this beast, it is absolutely beyond expectation, unreasonable fantasy that they could have possibly conveyed, closed down. This is how it happened. They closed down for fiduciary mismanagement, criminality, insolvency, default, closed the bank, and then within 24 hours supposedly had conveyed it to the FDIC as receiver for both WAMU and for J.P. Morgan Chase, who supposedly did the conveyance and the transaction. Now, whether J.P. Morgan Chase tendered any substance, any actual payment that they can prove with a contract and a receipt and a canceled check that they supposedly used to acquire, or merely used bank credit to acquire it, or perhaps a ledger entry on the books or double books of the bank to acquire the alleged assets, they still purchase the assets, which makes them not a party of interest, but a speculator, wager, gambler, and somebody that doesn't have any first-party interest to the loan. They weren't the originator, weren't at the table. They were trespassers on the contract, and therefore third-party debt collectors with no right, title, or interest. And this
that's
is precisely
one UCC 1001. That's probably the best evidence. For those of you who don't speak legalese, what Chris said is you got to have a right to own it, and you got to show that you transferred it.
What did you say that UCC site that you were talking about was?
That's the best evidence rule. That's 1 UCC 1001, and then I believe it's 1001 A or B. It's called the best evidence rule. It doesn't matter who has your note. I can have your note. But you have to be able to show how you got it.
That's right.
You have
and
to
there are
be able
fatal defects in the chain of custody because no one knows who from the FDIC or the Office of Thrift Supervision would have transmitted the digital information to J.P. Morgan Chase, so there's no basis, no foundation for the trail of evidence or the chain of custody or the abstract title.
You have to be a first-hand material witness.
Absolutely. There is nobody. So it's fatally defective, and there isn't one. It's destroyed, and you can never put the chain of custody back together again.
Sure. Yeah, you have to have a first-hand material witness competent to stand trial in court of law to attest to the facts, to say, yes, I know for a fact, under penalty of perjury, I know for a fact that is what transpired. But if you don't fall for that, then they will not provide it.
Well, and remember, what they do is they claim that they checked their business records and found them to support this. Well, what they don't talk about is how they acquired those business records, because that's the fatal flaw in their thing. And remember, digitally transmitted information is unsecure, unreliable, and hearsay testimony because you cannot qualify, validate, or verify who actually sent the information. Were they a true, authentic custodian of records or a conservator of documents?
Now, there was a lady who came on before we started rambling who said,
yes,
are we talking about foreclosures? She's still on.
Talking about foreclosure.
That was Mimi. Are you there, Mimi?
May have ran her off by rambling.
Let me see.
I was going to say, she actually had questions, and Brad actually had that help me out here recently. He has a wealth of information on the foreclosures. So I didn't know if she actually had a question. Maybe we could actually direct her in the right way.
I just unmuted a line that might have been her.
Okay.
The line that was just unmuted, was that you, Mimi?
No, that was Ron. I was going to ask the question if she didn't get on.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I was going to make a statement. It's not even a question, and you guys can chew on this. But I hear all these laws and cases that are winning everywhere in the United States. Seem like somebody's win. Some homeowner is defeated the bank in court and have won everywhere except California. It just seems like in California, these judges and all, they're like Teflon Dons. Nothing sticks. They don't look at evidence. They don't care about evidence. All they care about is the bank. The bank brought you in. I feel like, I'll put it this way. I feel like when I was a kid, and if an adult said I did something wrong, my parents believed it. And that's how these judges are. So when I hear you guys say this stuff, I'm like, wow, I'm living in the wrong state. Or these guys are living in a fantasy world, because it doesn't work here in California.
You actually have the Rosenthal Act there in California. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The main thing you really got to understand about this is the banks run. The people who have the money run the world. And the reason they run the world is because they have the money. What they've done is they put a protective system in, a check valve, to make sure that they stay in control. So they run the courts. The people who write the laws enforce the laws. and they're in cahoots with the banks. It's all intertwined. Now, the banks have set it up so that our illustrious leaders have mortgage-backed securities for the retirement. So if the mortgages fail, guess what? Now they don't have a retirement. Kind of a catch-22. So in my findings, the only way you're really going to get these people to succumb to your will is to have such an overwhelming amount of information and catch them in so many lies that they cannot proceed. And when they do anyway, then you have to appeal it. Another thing, an interesting thing that I've heard, and this is from a friend of mine, she actually has a friend who's a judge. She told me that lower courts, if a foreclosure case was brought into a lower court by a pro se, regardless of the information that is provided to the lower courts by the pro se, they were to rule against the pro se. That's regardless of the information brought by the pro se. Now, the directive was that all this information, if the pro se wanted to proceed, that it was to be taken to an appellate court and heard there, or taken to the Supreme Court. And this is from a viable source. I live in a prominent neighborhood. My friends, my neighbors are lawyers, attorneys, doctors, business owners. Some of them, a guy who lives across the street from me is one of the main attorneys for one of the biggest market or manufacturing companies in the world. So I live amongst these people. So I walk with them and I understand who they are, what they are. And basically, they got the money and they want to keep it. So if you're looking to bring an action against somebody, I've actually contacted a multitude of attorneys. Most of them are so arrogant. Whenever I talk to them, they want to talk down to me and say, well, you don't understand. And when I say, well, no, I do understand because this, and I'll go in and I'll blow them away with my information. Most attorneys, I have to explain what the laws are to them because they study procedure, not law. So as far as getting your case heard and winning, the best thing I can tell you about that is get an attorney that will work for you on, help me out here, Chris. No money down.
You can't find one. You'll find very, very few will actually work for you. It's about getting the money, not by any means possible. Right. I can tell you, if you look at attorney fees in Volume 7 of Corpus Juris Secundum, the secular second body of the law, some would say the second body of the law, you'll find that in the Attorney Fees Awards Act, any money that you tender to an attorney in the form of a retainer, deposit for contract, or a down payment on the possibility of representation is deemed by them to be a contribution, gift, or donation. There's no expectation of performance provided to those naive enough to trust the attorney trade to do anything. That's not word for word, but it's close.
Right, right. So your best bet is actually to find an attorney who actually knows what he's doing, and those are far and few and far between. But if you're looking to find somebody that's going to represent you, you need to find somebody who will actually sit and listen to you. And I think I can compare this to taking your car into a mechanic. If your car is making a weird noise, find out what the weird noise is before you take it to the mechanic so you don't sit down and say, I have a weird noise. Can you go find this? So absolutely. Well, $4,000 later, they'll say, well, you had a loose bolt in your dash. So if you actually know where you're at and you can sit down across from somebody and properly articulate and present your case and pretty much have it drawn up prior to sitting down and transfer a fund, you have a better chance. Here's what a gentleman who lives up here in the Missouri area, about 60 miles from me. He's a high-powered attorney. He's actually an expert witness for attorneys. He says he has an expert witness for attorneys against banks. Here's what he told me. I'll sit with you, and I told him what I had going on. He said, yes, you're right. He said, I'll sit with you and review your documents. It's $250 an hour. I need $7,500 up front. He said, that's not a retainer. He said, that's my money. He said, if I don't use it all, then you don't get it back. He said, after that, he said, I'll negotiate with the banks to get this either loan removed or this lien against your property removed, or we can get a modification so that the amount due is lower. He said, whichever way it goes, I get 10%. He said, if you have $100,000 that's forgiven, I get $10,000. He said, I don't think you know who it is you're talking to. He said, I'm the person that everybody goes to. He said, there's people out there that will do this for less money. I said, I understand that. Problem is, I don't want somebody who'll do it for less money because I want the best. And he said, bring your documents in, bring me $7,500. He said, we'll get started. This is what is required to go up against these, excuse my language, these sons of bitches, these thieves that they call the banks. They never loan you money. They never loan you money, ever. And yet they come in and they steal your property. And the courts watch it happen every single day. So, and I'm starting to get a little emotional on that, but I personally have lost $472,000 worth of property. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's my retirement, because I don't believe the government's going to take care of me whenever I get older. That was my retirement. It got stolen out from underneath me. So I do have a personal vendetta, and I am going to proceed, and I will prevail. I'm diligent.
Yeah, you need to, because they've got a big ranch in Paraguay, and they've got, like, luxury everything in Christchurch, New Zealand. So they're set up. They're set up well.
It's just a good old boys club, and you're not in it. I love that line. That's from what's his name, the comedian. What was his name? The dirty guy. Was got a seven things you can't say on TV. What's that?
George Carlin?
George Carlin, yeah. Yeah, George Carlin says it's a good old boys club, and you're not in it. So, anyway, I'll let somebody else ramble for a minute. I'll mute out.
Yeah, we got 7 minutes, guys, and in 7 minutes I'm cutting the call. So I have to get up fairly early here tomorrow. So 7 minutes. Who wants to talk?
Let me continue what I was going to say before. There's a guy named Tom Horn. He has a book out, and he actually talk about they are doing Isis. You know, if you know Isis and Horus and Osiris, Egyptian god. As you know, that the whole entire Washington, D.C. is mapped out with the Egyptian gods and symbols. And basically the dorm of the Washington, D.C. White House is actually the belly of the Isis when she was pregnant, and from the Osiris, which Osiris was chopped up in 14 pieces by Isis' brother, and but Isis actually put all the bodies together except where she cannot find his penis, and basically dorm is the Isis belly, and the obelisk that's standing in
I'm going to mute out 215. Hold on, you guys. It's just a little loud. Hold on here. 215. Sorry, I got to mute you. Okay, go ahead.
So the obelisk that's standing tall in front of the Washington, D.C. White House is the penis of the Orisis. And basically, Tom Horn talks about they are doing a ritual to rise the spirit of the god of Isis, and basically the god of Isis are actually they're all a god of war. So that's what I heard from the video that is playing. So that's pretty interesting. I guess they wanted.
Is there links or anything, or a name of the Tom Horn video?
Yeah, if you go to YouTube.com and punch 2016 Global Affairs Unveiled, guest Tom Horn. So he comes out and talk about this.
Tom Horn has that new Skywatch TV network. He and Chris Putnam put out a number of very expository investigative reports on the Lucifer telescope, I should be able to tell you the names of them. I'm pretty sure I've sent you links for that, Randy, and maybe even Gloria also. But Exo-Vaticanus is one of theirs, and there's, I can't remember what the names are.
Seems like there's a lot of things going to happen in 2016. There's another guy who's been researching about the Nephilim, and they're talking about the Nephilims. They're supposed to stay underground for 70 generations, and the one generation is equal to 70 years, and so they're supposed to stay underground for about 4,900 years, and they're calculating that they're supposed to come out from the underground, and it's the year of like somewhere around 2008. It could be some years off. They think it's coming soon. The Nephilims will be coming out from the underground.
Gloria, did you get to see the lights, the northern lights the other night up north? You know, we had a solar flare come off, and the aurora was absolutely just going berserk on Tuesday night. I thought maybe you got to see the northern lights up there. They say that they were able to be seen as far south as the Ohio valleys up there.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So it's pretty interesting. Definitely there is some aliens eating human beings.
Yeah.
And you know, these guys, they're talking about the Nephilims are eating human beings.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're under attack right now by all different sources, and this is all with the stars lining up and the moons are lining up, and we're having solar flares and everything. We're actually having weather that's comparable now to the Old Testament biblical times with all the blood moons and the worm moons and all these things that are coming back. The cycle of the earth is coming back around. So we're now actually witnessing these things that were happening 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. And pretty fascinating times if you pay attention. A huge meteor shower out here the other night out in Missouri, just one after another, just boom, 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 boom. Spectacular display. So, yeah, if everybody watch your skies and watch your forecast, you can see some really beautiful stuff. So I didn't know if you had been able to see that or not.
There have been a couple of fairly significant coronal mass ejections and strong emanations from the sun. Lots of activity going on there, and some of them are coming our direction, which is precisely what would cause the aurora borealis or the northern lights that you spoke of. And these can also cause interruptions with the ability to communicate, perhaps electromotive force interruptions and blasts, could be breakdown in communications or electronics, and could destroy electronics in your homes. So there's a particular site that I find particularly informative called the Suspicious Observer on YouTube, and he puts out every couple of days some very well explained with great graphics and live photo feeds from the SOHO and some of the other spatial satellites and things that watch the sun on a perpetual basis and multiple different colored rendition images, so you can actually see very well what's occurring. And he forecasts these events, which he relates to seismic and volcanic precipitation events around the Earth. And it certainly makes sense, since the sun is at perihelion, which is the closest time in Earth's orbit every 26,500 years approximately to the sun, and it being over 1 million times larger than the moon, which causes the tides here on Earth. When we're at this apex or closest point of contact in the elliptical orbit around the sun, it's not difficult to contemplate with common sense that the strength of magnetism on that great spheroid of the sun in the sky would have noticeable effects, including geospatial reorientation or twisting the planet, perhaps even inverting it at some form. We know it had to recalibrate the GPS alignment points at numerous airports because of the geo-tilt of the Earth. And so it's certainly worth paying some heed to.
Yep.
So actually, there is a ID name on YouTube called Yellow Roses for Texas. And the video is basically talk about that we really cannot see the sun from outer space. Our sun is not visual, but we could see the moon and the Earth, but no, you can't see the sun or any stars. And basically, there are a couple people that are talking about this, and I started analyzing why they cannot see sun. And but there's another actually shooting the sun. The sun appears to be red. It seems like they're shooting with maybe like infrared light, infrared lens or something. And they are actually shooting at the sun, and then the solar flare was coming out. So there's something is shooting the sun and manipulating the sun. So it's pretty interesting.
Has anybody ever heard that before, by the way?
Yeah, I've actually heard that.
I've never heard that until Gloria had mentioned it the other day, and so that sent me on another tangent down a bunch of rabbit holes. Why can they not see the sun when they're out in space? So
I believe when you actually study the star system, the star is born by the gas, and the gas is not visual. And
right.
gas did not materialize yet into liquid or liquid to solid. So there is a stage where the gas turns into liquid and liquid turns into solid mass, but actually sun does not have any solid mass at this time. And so I believe, this is my theory, the sun is just purely in a gas stage right now. And it's basically hollow. But because of there is the gravity, something that pulls to the center of the sun, so definitely there is a much more concentrated gas that forms the circle. and according to my research.
Right. When it burns out, it'll become a negative mass. The negative mass is negative ions. Negative gravity turns into a black hole. Instead of putting out, now it'll be sucking everything in.
No, not actually. The black hole is something else. But when the star is born, that's how the star is born, and all the stars outside, they are same matter. They are same as the sun. So those stars are not visible, also. But when you enter into the space of the Earth, the atmosphere, then you can see the sun and you can see the stars.
Right.
So
absolutely. You don't see it. You actually see the reflection of the light off the surface.
Right. So maybe the gas is interacting with the atmosphere of the Earth, and maybe that is reflecting each other, and we could be able to see the sun from our space. But when you get out of that space, you can't see the sun. So I thought that was very incredible. And then,
well, Randy, I know you said you wanted to sign off here. Dave, I'm signing off. I got 2 phone calls I got to make. So you all have a blessed week, and hopefully we can catch up next week.
Sounds great, and thanks for all your input. And good night, everyone. Thank you all for all of your input. Appreciated everything, and we all got some things to think about. So if you check your email, you all have the BOE docs that Steve sent me. So go through it. And he says he's got something where it's convertible docs. I'll be checking for that. And I will be putting this all on the site. That way I won't have to email it. So with that, good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. And we already know we're starting off the program with Steve Curry again next week. He's going into the next level of some of this stuff for us. Till then, we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone. Thank you.